All right, we are back again for round 2 of word problems. We're really not going to do anything new or different. We're just going to practice the process some more because this is tricky business. So just like yesterday, we are going to start by defining what our x and y are representing. Then we're going to use the words to write equations, decide if we want to use substitution or elimination to solve those equations, and then get our answers and write them in a sentence form that answers the original question. So take a look at example 1. Dennis found a handful of dimes and nickels in the couch at his house, 80 coins in total. He counted out the coins and it came to $6.60. How many of each coin did he earn? If you remember from yesterday, I suggested that you reread that end part and then decide from that what your x and y will represent. So it's asking how many of each coin. Well, there were dimes and nickels. So I'm going to let x equal the number of dimes that he found, and I'm going to let y represent the number of nickels that he found. Okay, now I'm on to part B. And in part B, I have to do the tricky business of writing a system of equations. So I go back to the words and I try to find some words that can turn into an equation. It says, Dennis found a handful of dimes and nickels in the couch at his house, 80 coins total. So again, total, if you remember, means you're adding, which means the number of dimes plus the number of nickels will add up to 80 coins. That's the total number of coins. Okay, let's go look for some more words to give us more equations. He counted out the coins and it came to $6.60. Now this one's kind of tricky because this is about the value of the money. I know my total is $6.60 because it says it came to a total of that. So think about dimes. Dimes are worth 10 cents and nickels are worth 5. So when I go to figure out the total money, I need 10 cents per dime plus 5 cents per nickel. So from now on, anytime you have money questions, think about that. It's the value of the coin, so 10 cents times how many there are, which is X, plus the value of the nickels, which is 5 cents, times how many there are, which is Y, and then that adds up to the total money. So the top is simply straight up the number of coins that he found. The bottom is actually the dollar value. Okay, well, this looks like it actually might be easier to solve using substitution. And it also looks a little tricky. So whatever strikes your fancy, I would be tempted, starting with this, 0.10x plus 0.05y equals 660, I would be tempted to multiply the entire top by negative 0.10. So each part of the top, that will give me negative 0.10x and a negative 0.10y. And if I take 80 and I multiply it by negative 0.10, I get negative 8. Then I'm just going to copy this one because what I'm trying to do in elimination, remember, is eliminate one of my variables. So I've set up a situation where these will eliminate. A negative and a positive 0.10x will cancel one another out. So then in this column, I'm going to take negative 0.10 and a positive 0.05, and I'll get negative 0.05y. And here, if I take my negative 8 and my positive 6.60, I get negative 1.4. So even though the numbers are kind of messy, I have a calculator, so I'm good to go. To find y, I'll divide by negative 0.05. So dividing that negative 1.4 by negative 0.05, I get that y is 28 because I'm solving for y in this case. I'm just writing it like we used to make my life a little easier. Now I don't have much room, but I need to still find x. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go back up here. And of these two equations, this one's the easiest one. If I say, okay, I don't know x, but I do know y is 28, and they have to add up to 80. So I can take away that 28. I'm using my first answer to get my second answer. And when I do 80 minus 28, I end up with 52 for x. So that work is how we would have been working on it in the last couple of weeks. But now I'm supposed to write my answer in a sentence. And the question was, how many of each coin did he earn, which really means find. So I would write the answer so it makes sense. Dennis found 52, and what was my X representing? Looking back here, that was dimes and 28 nickels in the couch. So I'm just taking what I found and changing that into a full sentence. All right, so that's new because it's got the element of money value. So let's see if that pops up in this next one or not. All right, in example 2, it says, on Monday, Joe bought 10 cups of coffee and 5 donuts for his office for $16.50. The next day, he bought 5 cups of coffee and 10 donuts for his office for $14.25. How much was each cup of coffee and donut? Okay, that's a lot to manage, but I'm going to do what I always do and look again at the end. How much, meaning how much money, was each cup of coffee and donut? That helps me figure out what each thing is supposed to represent. So I can let X equal the cost, because it's asking how much of a cup of coffee. And I can let Y equal the cost of a donut, because that's what they're asking. They're saying, hey, how much is each cup of coffee and how much is each donut going to cost? So now I have my variables. Now I'm going to move on to turning these words into equations that I can solve. One relationship tells me he bought 10 cups of coffee and 5 donuts, and it added up to $16.50. So let's turn that into words. 10 cups of coffee is going to be 10 cups times how much the coffee cost, plus 5 donuts means 5y, because the X is representing my cups of coffee and Y is representing the donuts. And that has to total $16.50. Okay, for these we need a second equation, so I look for a second relationship. It says the next day he bought 5 cups of coffee and 10 donuts for $14.25. So now I have 5 cups of coffee plus 10 donuts, and that is turning out to equal $14.25. So once again, with these both being in standard form, it makes a lot more sense to use elimination to solve this rather than substitution, because I don't just have that Y equals something or X equals something. Now, in the process of elimination, I need an equal but opposite pair. It doesn't really matter which ones you match up. The only tool you can use is multiplication. So just glancing at this, probably the first thing I see is to multiply the bottom row by a -2. So my top row stays the same. I'm going to try to create a positive 10x and a negative 10x. Then distributing that -2 to everybody, I have to multiply everything in that bottom row by that -2. So I end up with these numbers in my bottom row after multiplying each piece by -2. Now I draw my big fat line. I can eliminate my x's, a positive 10x and a negative 10x. these will combine to be negative 15y. If I have 1650 and then a negative 2850, I end up with negative 12. So when I divide by negative 15, I get y equals negative 12 divided by negative 15. I get 0.8, which at first seems like it's not the right answer, but keep in mind we're talking about the cost of a donut for y. So ultimately that's going to mean 80 cents. After we get y, we have to go back to one of our original problems, plug it in to solve for x. So it doesn't matter which one. Let's go back and take this original problem, 5x plus 10, and then the y that I just found has to equal 1425. So I am taking this bottom equation and plugging in what I just got for y. So when I take 10 times my 0.8, that's going to turn into an 8. So I'll have 5x plus 8 equals 14.25. Continuing my solving like we've been doing all year, I get 5x equals 6.25. And dividing 6.25 by 5, I find out that x equals 1.25. Okay, again, that makes sense because my x is representing the cost of a cup of coffee. So in the end, when I have to write my answer as a sentence, because the question was how much was each cup of coffee and donut, I would say each cup of coffee costs $1.25 and each donut costs, because now I'm talking about the y, 80 cents. And I'm done. So even though I have just a really easy answer in the end to explain, I have to do an awful lot of work setting it up and solving using the skills we learned before. All right, tackle your problems. Now keep in mind that since these problems were elimination, you would expect your homework problems to be elimination. So go ahead and give those a try. Come back and watch part or all of the video if you need more help. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.